that's sort of the lesson that I've learned is find things that you love and that you're really, really, really passionate about and do it because it won't ever feel like work.
What's going on, Next Gen fam? Welcome back to Mentor Momentum, the podcast where we break down career and life insights from some of the world's best and brightest. And I promise you today is no exception. We have not one, but two incredible leaders from the Asana team. Asana is one of the premier task management platforms and a personal favorite of Next Gen, one that we use every day. So we got to get right into it. Today's guests are Jessica Gilmartin, the head of Demand Generation, and Dana Barrett, the head of global product marketing at Asana. We have so much to dive into, so I got to welcome them to the stage. Jessica, Dana, thank you so much for joining us on Mentor Momentum.
So nice to be here.
I want to dive right in, and I got a question for both of you guys, and maybe Jessica, we'll start with you. But you guys have been, as we pulled out backstage, following each other, maybe unintentionally, from the IB days to the Wharton days to the Google days, but obviously working together for the first time at Asana. How do you guys in your roles play in with each other in the marketing ecosystem, and how are you guys working alongside each other at Asana currently? Jessica, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. I think marketing is interesting. I personally feel like it's the most cross-functional discipline that there is. We have a lot of constituents that we have to work with, and product marketing is an absolutely critical collaborator of mine. I love working with Dana. We have a great relationship. And really where we intersect is with sales. So my job is to make sure that we take the wonderful products that our product team builds and figure out how do we actually sell those? How do we make money off of them? And so obviously Dana and I work really, really closely together to figure out what's the right story to tell. How do we make sure that the sales team understands it? And how do we make sure that it gets in the market the way that our product team intended it to be?
Dana, how are you guys playing together, and how does the product marketing then translate over to the demand generation side from your perspective?
So a lot of what product marketing does at Asana is we work really closely with product to figure out what are the right products to build? How do we ensure that we have the right product market fit? And then how do we position them in the market? So my team spends a lot of time on messaging and positioning and thinking about how we tell a story about our products that's really going to tie deeply into our customers' needs. And then once we've kind of nailed that story, we work very closely with Jessica's team to ensure that we have the right content and information to plug into everything from events to sales collateral to emails to customers. So it's translating that story into something that's actually actionable and tangible that will reach our customers in the right moment.
Yeah, it's so cool because when I think about it from being at a startup, marketing was not one of the first things that we were like, oh, okay, we should be thinking about marketing, and now we're like, we need to be thinking about marketing. Like we had to have been thinking about this for years. Dana, what is your advice for people getting started? Obviously, you guys have such a robust ecosystem, that you take a product and then you give it life in product marketing, and then you put it out to the market with demand generation and being able to have this be a robust cycle. And you guys are working so well together. What would you say for an entrepreneur getting started? What are the core things that they should be thinking about?
Well, oftentimes, especially in tech, one of the first marketing hires that companies make is product marketing. And that's for a reason. You can build the best product in the world that solves the most critical pains that people have. But if they are not aware of that, if they're not aware they have this problem, and if they're not aware that your product can uniquely solve that problem, they're not going to buy your product. And so I think for a lot of tech companies, they rely on just building an amazing product and expect people to discover it. But that's not how the world works. People are inundated with information from social media, television, whatever it is, or podcasts, et cetera. And so the power of marketing is marketers know how to cut through that clutter and how to capture the attention of potential customers at the right time and in the right way, and in a way that they'll listen. So they'll actually buy your product.
Wow. It's so, to me, it resonates so well. You know, you think about the tech founder that's like, all right, if our product is great, people will come. But you're so right, being able to give it life. And I think you guys have done such an incredible job with that at Asana. And you're like living it every day. Jessica, we've heard you talk about that 99% of the communication is done via Asana versus via email, which to me is like, my head explodes because we're in email all day. But talk to us, how are you guys using Asana internally? And how have you managed to go from basically email, which everyone is using, to now 99% of your communication done via Asana?
Yeah, I was actually talking to some friends yesterday, and they were like, "Man, you have drunk the Kool-Aid." I'm like, "Oh yeah, the Kool-Aid is fully drunk," because what I love about Asana, and actually one of the reasons I came to Asana was that at my last company, I was CMO of a much smaller company. We could not get campaigns launched on time for the life of us, and someone that on my team was like, "We have to put in Asana," and I never even heard of it. And then once we got it in, it was game changing for us. So I think what we use it for is really to enable a lot of clarity, right? So what I have found is that when you're emailing or Slacking somebody and you're like, "Hey, are you going to get this thing done?" Right? You're going to do this, right? And then they'll respond, "Yes." And then you sort of hope that they remember to get this thing done on this date. And oftentimes they don't. And so you're chasing them and you're chasing them. You're saying, "Hey, are you getting this done?" And all of a sudden you're trying to put all those campaigns together. You're trying to get everything launched. And you've got now 15 people that, you've got the PR person that's you're trying to make sure they get the press release done on time. And then you realize that actually the product is not launching when they say they're going to launch. And so everything gets pushed back, and you've got to email everybody and make sure they know the dates. The creative team is now working on the previous dates. And then what Asana does is it really allows you to create a project, right? So we basically start with a project. So everything is a project. And there are tasks that are assigned within each project. And so everybody's working from the same information. And so, for example, even for this podcast, Leah, who's our fantastic PR person, tasked us and said, "On this date, you're going to be on this podcast, and here's all the information that you need." And then we accept it, right? We approve that we're going to do it. And so she knows that we have said, "Yes, we're going to be here on this date. We have all the information we need, and anything that changes, it's the system of record that changes for everybody on this project." So it really fundamentally makes like a big, big difference in terms of clarity.
Wow, that is like next level organization. I'm sitting here being like, somebody shoots me a note, I'm like, all right, respond, quick emoji, thumbs up. But it's like you get to have such organization in a way that we have an incredible team member at NextGen who spearheaded our transfer to Asana, and like every day is like, all right, a little bit more, like get everybody out of the inbox. And I think it's so spot on. Dana, I'd love to hear from you from the product marketing side. The story of Asana and like how it is solving that like customer needs, building on, everything Jessica just shared.
Well, I think that the deep customer pain that we solve at Asana is this fear of things falling through the cracks. And I think that's what Jessica's articulating. And we do that by helping teams to orchestrate their work. We provide clarity around who is doing what by when. And we also show you how all of the different work streams that are going on are connected. So for example, you create a project, you're trying to, let's say, launch a campaign. You can very easily establish owners for each individual task that needs to get done. You can clearly indicate when things are going to get done. And then Asana allows you to visualize how all those different work streams come together to get you to your final deliverable. So you have one source of truth, clarity around who's doing what by when, and it's really easy if something's off track to quickly spot the problem, troubleshoot the problem, and get the project back on track. And so that's like the magic power of Asana. It helps you to orchestrate work. And it can be simple projects that are just, 2 or 3 people, or, projects that span across 50, 100 people in big, large enterprise organizations.
I'm sold. I mean, you got me on board. Dana, I want to go back to you and talk a bit about your journey, which I think is so fascinating. Starting out in IB, you talk about, moving over to an operations role, and then somebody gave you an opportunity to jump into product marketing. And, on the surface, you see, all right, IB, product marketing, like those seem like such distant fields. Can you talk a bit about your journey there and what advice you would give to, you know, the audience that you're talking to that may be majoring in a topic that they aren't super passionate about, or, you know, want to maybe change fields down the line? What advice would you have there?
So my journey is actually even more complex than what you laid out. I mean, I majored in chemical engineering.
Wow.
Then I decided, you know what, this is boring. I had some internships and I was like, this isn't fun. So I pivoted over to banking because I thought that would be fast paced, you know, more exciting. Discovered it was very, very long hours and a very tough career. So I decided to move into consulting.
Wow.
And through consulting, I got the experience of being able to be strategic, of being able to solve hard problems. And I loved that. But what I didn't love was the travel, and I didn't love not owning things. So I moved to a corporate job. And so you can see each move, I picked something I loved, something I didn't like, and I kind of pivoted to that next opportunity. So when I moved to corporate and eventually into product marketing, I kind of found all the things that I kind of liked about the little pieces of my journey along the way, with better hours and less travel. And I think the advice that I would give to people as they're trying to craft their careers is to be open. Because if you had asked me when I was in college what I would be doing 5 years, 10 years down the road, it would not have been consulting at McKinsey or product marketing at Google.
Yeah.
So if you're open to possibility and opportunity, if you try to learn everything you can where you are, but pay attention to the things that bring you joy and the things that drain your energy. Also network and talk to people.
Yeah.
You'll stumble upon opportunities along the way, things that you wouldn't even expect. And that's the way you start to kind of fine tune and identify what is the thing that you were meant to be doing. So
yeah,
that's how I kind of went from chemical engineering to banking to product marketing. And I will tell you, I love working as a product marketer. It's the perfect job for me personally, but it took a lot of trial and error to get here.
And I think it's so reassuring for the audience, right? You think when you're coming out of school now, even before you go to school, you're expected to kind of know what you want to do by selecting into a major that you're focused on. And I think you break it down in a way that's so tangible, which is like, hey, you don't just have to wake up one day and say, all right, I don't like investment banking, I'm now a product marketer. You can actually find the things that make you happy along the way and the things you don't like, and slowly like hop into a place that becomes more and more close to what is your like ideal day to day. Jessica, I got to go to you because you similarly, I think you've had a crazy journey as well. IB, time at Google, you're an entrepreneur who started a yogurt franchise. So talk to us, one, about the experience kind of having that entrepreneurial background and maybe how it's informed you today, but also that journey and how you've kind of been able to similarly kind of piggyback and get to where you are.
Yeah, I probably have one of the least traditional paths ever to marketing at a tech company. But yeah, so I also majored in industrial and labor relations, thinking I was going to be a lawyer, and took my first law class and was like, nope, I'm not going to be a lawyer. And I discovered investment banking, and it sounded also really interesting. And again, it's actually very similar to what Dana said, very fast paced and intellectually challenging. I did that for 4 years and realized that, I really was passionate about being involved in the companies, and I wanted to see what it was like to be an operator company, but I didn't know what that looked like. So I went to business school, discovered marketing there, and that's sort of what started me on my career in marketing. When I moved to the Bay Area, I actually decided to start a business with one of my closest friends, and we really just sort of brainstormed on the things that we were really passionate about. And I'd say that that's sort of the lesson that I've learned is find things that you love and that you're really, really, really passionate about, and do it because it won't ever feel like work. And so the thing that I'm really passionate about is health food. It's healthy living, healthy food. And I really wanted to provide something to the folks in the Bay Area that didn't exist at the time. So we ended up creating our own yogurt business. We're very, very successful. We're very fortunate. And for a variety of reasons, mainly because I was working 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, and wanted to start a family, decided to sell it. And then, had my first child and got brought back into the work world by consulting for some tech companies. And so that's sort of the journey. And so I ended up consulting for a tech company. I came on there full time. We got bought by Google. And then I sort of went on this startup path where I was at 3 startups in the row as CMO, COO. I built my own sales team, built my own marketing team, built operation, ran sales and marketing, customer support. So yeah, so I've had kind of a crazy journey, but fundamentally the things that I look for are things that I think will teach me something. So I'm very intellectually curious, and I love things that really challenge me and push me. And the way that I've always sort of lived my life is like, the thing that seems the scariest is the thing that I should probably do, because that's probably where I'll learn the most and grow the most.
I am a recovering yogurt fanatic. I'm now vegan, so it makes it a bit harder, but it's such a cool space. And I think you were in it at the time, right when it was like the yogurt craze.
Yes.
What advice would you have in addition to like pursue the passions for, entrepreneurs, being that you've worked not just in large companies like a Google, but also on the startup side in so many different capacities? What would you say for people getting started now? What should they be thinking about, and how should they be approaching, wanting to pull their venture, from the boots up off the ground?
The biggest thing that I would say is really follow your instincts. Don't listen to the conventional wisdom, because if you follow the conventional wisdom, you'll just do what everybody else does. I mean, I remember so vividly when we were starting our business and we met with a ton of experts, and literally every single one told us we would fail. Like, there wasn't a single person that believed in us, because what we were trying to do was so different. We bought our own pasteurizer and had it shipped from Europe. We made our own yogurt. Everything was organic. Everything was small batches, made by hand every day. Every single person that had experience told us we wouldn't be successful because we wouldn't have the volume, we wouldn't have the economics, we wouldn't have product market fit. But we believed in it. Like, we knew that there was an audience for it. We knew there was a market for it, because we had done a ton of research, right? So you have to follow both your intuition, but also match it up with a lot of just hard work. We walked every single street in the Bay Area, from Berkeley down to San Jose, literally every street. And we mapped every single one of them to try to triangulate the perfect location for our target market, right? So you do that kind of research and you marry it with your intuition and your passion and follow that. Like, listen to people, absorb it, but don't take their advice literally. That would be my number one advice to an entrepreneur, because if we had taken the advice of all the conventional wisdom, we 100% would have closed in a year, because that's what every single other yogurt business did. We were the only ones that lasted more than 2 years.
That's unbelievable. And what's so funny is, you guys shared we were talking backstage, and not knowing that you guys had been along the same path together through Wharton, through Google. Similarly, in the research, I think, Dana, you talk about thinking unconventionally as well when it comes to, something you shared in an AMA about not thinking just about the next promotion in the early on in your career, but thinking about the skills and what you're going to learn, which I think is so different from what, people are saying. It's the advice I heard when I got into the market was like, all right, stay somewhere, grow, get the promotion. But if you don't like it, like, it's so hard to stay there. And I think you have such a different approach, as you talked about a bit in your journey. But can you share more about that one component of, the promotion versus learning and growing and kind of becoming the best version of yourself?
Well, I will say that is the advice I give. I didn't always follow that advice. I think sometimes I personally over-rotated on making the next move, getting that next promotion. And I see a lot of the young folks that are either on my team or that I work with or come to me asking advice. They're so hyper-focused on getting to the next level, getting that title, that they don't stop and think about a couple of things. One, what am I learning and absorbing, and what can I be curious about in the role that I'm in? Two, they don't stop to think about, like, what are the things that I actually enjoy doing, and what are the things that like bring me energy and drain my energy. And by being so maniacally focused on promotions, you miss out on all the great learnings. You miss out on all the great lessons. You miss out on those hints about what things you could be doing that would truly bring you more joy than what you're doing today. So hyper focusing on just next step and level just makes you miss so many potential opportunities. And look, I made that mistake personally. And when I did that, I found myself very unhappy, very unfulfilled. and very drained and overworked. That was the mindset I ended up getting into by over-rotating on promotion. So I had to learn the hard way, like, hey, that's not a productive way to live. Let's try a different approach. So hopefully by hearing this, some folks out there will learn the lesson in an easier way than I did, and be curious.
Yeah. Building off that, one thing I wanted to definitely talk to both of you about was your team habits and how you're able to lead your teams. And, you know, community members submitting questions about how do you guys nurture direct reports, and how do you, you know, set a North Star and motivate your team to kind of keep moving forward together. So maybe Jessica, your thoughts first on motivating teams, nurturing reports, helping them continue to grow and be the best version so that the team can continue to grow.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made as a first-time manager was I focused on the work first and the person second. And as I've gotten more senior in my career, and as I've realized the responsibility that I have as a manager to actually, you know, I really can influence people's lives in a really positive way or really negative way. And I want people to look back and say, gosh, Jessica was a great manager and she really helped me and she really helped me flourish in my career. That is something that's really important to me. And so as I've had more reports and as I've had more experience, the thing that I've really triangulated on is I care much more about the person first and I care more about the work second. And what that allows me to do is really understand the person as a person and not just as a person that gets work done, right? So the first thing that I do when I join any organization or when someone reports to me is I try to learn as much as I can about them. You know, I try to understand their working style, what makes them happy, what makes them frustrated. I try to be really upfront with my strengths and my weaknesses so we can form a really deep relationship. And I really try to understand where do they want to be in a year and where do they want to be in 5 years, right? I hope that they're going to be with me for many, many years, but I also recognize that there may be other opportunities that might be better for them. So my goal is to really understand, like, what do they want to accomplish? You know, do they want to be a people manager? Do they want to be an IC? Do they want to transition to product marketing? Do they want to transition to sales? And so really thinking through what are the things that I can do? What are the projects I can get them involved in? What are the things that I can do over the course of their time with me that really allow them to achieve their personal goals and professional goals? I think also, especially during the pandemic, trying to be incredibly understanding and empathetic around what are some of the other things that are happening outside of work that might impact them, and really giving them the space and giving them the okay and the acceptance that it's okay when sometimes you have a really tough day. It's okay to take a day off or a few days off to deal with things that are happening, especially with all the things that have been happening in the world. You just have to recognize that sometimes people just need time off. They need mental breaks, and to really make sure that they understand that, and that I not only accept it, but that I suggest it, right? And that it's the right thing to do to give them that time off and to give them that space.
Absolutely. And I think it's such a powerful way that you approach it, the person first and kind of the work second, which obviously both, I'm sure, balancing out across the way and making it so that everything can keep moving forward. But I just think it allows, like you said, much more vulnerability and ability to grow together versus like everyone kind of growing separately. But Dana, before I want to keep diving in and I got so many questions, but Dana, your thoughts as to how you're motivating your team, where you kind of stand on how to nurture reports and continue to, you know, give them the best that they can be.
I, by the way, loved Jessica's answer. So I want to just say everything she said. Plus, so I too care deeply about professional development, and I try to really understand where people want to go. And I encourage folks on my team to be honest about, it's okay if where they want to go is outside of Asana or another team. I want to help them get wherever it is that they want to go, because, you know, you never know. Like the tech world is small, and you'll run into people again and again in your career. So if we work together now, we might be 5 years from now, we might come back together. Who knows? So I like to nurture people, help them grow, and maintain those connections. The other thing, though, that I really focus on as a manager is something that has been a huge pain point for me. It's this concept of prioritization. So I try to be really, really clear with my team about what our priorities are. What are the most important things we need to get right in order to help Asana achieve its mission and its business goals? I also try to be very clear with my boss about, hey, here's what product marketing will be focusing on, and will not be focusing on. And I think so many people I see are burning out because they don't know how to say no, and they struggle with setting clear boundaries and prioritizing. So I try to do that on behalf of my team, but I also try to teach them how to do it for themselves, how to push back, how to say no, how to be clear on what they're going to focus on now and what things they might do later and what things they're just not going to do potentially ever. So prioritizing, setting clear expectations. And then the other thing that I do with the team is making sure that once we nail down our priorities, they're set up for success to achieve them. So whether that's, in some cases, I have to be more directive and teach them things, or it's just that I have to coach them and encourage them to kind of think about a problem in a different way, or connect them with other people who have expertise that I don't. I try to make sure they have clear priorities and they have the support they need to achieve those priorities. And I find that that is the best way to ensure that teams don't burn out, but they also learn and grow and are fulfilled in the job that they have while they're with me.
Absolutely. And I'll do this shameless plug for you, because you can actually set priorities in Asana, right? You can like tag high priority, low priority. But I think it's so spot on, because especially the entrepreneur audience, when you're an entrepreneur, you want to say yes to everything. You're like, yeah. Like any opportunity you want to be yes. I see Jessica shaking her head from the days and the, yogurt venture being like, yeah, that resonates. But I know from everyone we've talked to, that's always like, yes, I want to do everything that comes my way, but it prevents you from being able to really have that focus and strive for that goals. I got to ask, you guys are performing at such a high level. What are you doing in your personal lives, morning routines that set you up for success every single day? Maybe Dana, we'll start with you.
So I am big into self-care. I learned the hard way that if you don't take care of yourself and nurture your health, I would be no good. I have 2 kids. I'm not going to be good as a mom. I'm not going to be good in my job. I'm not going to be a good wife, daughter. And so for me, that means I exercise 5 days a week. I have a Peloton, which I'm obsessed with. So I get in my exercise early in the morning. I try to eat very healthy. I'm big on vegetables. I try to make sure I get my, 5 a day? And I also am fanatical about sleep. Like I have my sleep rituals. I carve out clear time to sleep. I keep my room cool and dark, no devices. But by doing all those things, I'm able to physically feel good and operate at my peak performance.
Absolutely. Jessica, I know you mentioned a bit too. You touched on a bit of some of the stuff you're doing, in some of your answers, but for you, what are you doing that's keeping you kind of performing at your best daily?
Yeah, it's actually kind of similar. So for me, walking is really important. And actually one of the best things about the pandemic is my husband works upstairs. And so the 2 of us get to take walks, which we have never gotten to do during our entire marriage. So we try to at least get in 15, 20-minute walk every day. And that's where we can sort of express some of the challenges we've had. And we sort of share, one of us will talk about a business challenge that we have. And so I think just being able to talk out some of these issues and get an outside perspective is incredibly important. So for me, walking, sunshine, spending time with my kids, those are all things that really recharge me. I love to bake. So those are things like, I think and I also really spend a lot of time volunteering in my community. So I think just having some of these outside interests and having these things that really give you energy is really, really important. I spent so much of my life working all the time, literally working every single moment, that I just realized I need balance in my life, and I need things that really allow me to turn off the business side of my brain that always seems to be operating at full capacity, and give me these sort of creative outlets that allow me to give back to others.
Wow. You guys are awesome. This has been like one of my favorite interviews to date. And but somehow we've made it close to the end of our time. I don't even know how that flew by. But before we go, I love to end with this question for both of you, thinking back to the 20-year-old versions of yourself coming out of school, obviously in very different places, both potentially in investment banking at the same time. But what advice would you have for that version of yourself, and ultimately for the audience that you're speaking to now, looking back, knowing everything that you know? Maybe Jessica, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I would tell myself is not to be so hard on myself. I was such a perfectionist. And when I looked at other people, I believed that I was the only one that didn't know that I was the only one that wasn't perfect. And I was so afraid to make mistakes. I was so afraid to look dumb or to look like I didn't know the answer, that I just lived in a constant state of fear, especially in investment banking, which, as Dana knows, is a tough world.
Yeah.
So I really just closed myself off from learning new things and being vulnerable because I was so afraid to show that I didn't know the answer. And it was only when I started my own business, when I just by definition had to learn new things and had to be really vulnerable, that mindset changed. So what I would tell everybody out there is, it's okay to not know the answer. It's okay to take risks. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. These are all ways that you're going to learn and actually be a better version of yourself.
Dana, your thoughts?
Oh, Jessica, that was so good. It's so true. So I'll go with a different one, because Jessica's lesson is a lesson I've had to learn too, but there's another important lesson that I've had to learn. And I touched on it earlier about prioritizing. I'm one of those people, in part because of the reasons Jessica articulated, this fear of failure and needing to be perfect. I've always just approached life with, well, if I'm the hardest working person who never says no and who gets everything done perfectly, then I will achieve my goals. I will be successful. Turns out that is a terrible approach to your career and to your life. So it's only through completely burning myself out that I realized it's not about working the hardest. It's about working the smartest. So now I'm really focused on setting clear intentions. What are the things that matter most? Setting boundaries, saying no, and carving out time to rest. It is okay to shut your phone off at night. You do not need to be answering emails at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. or whatever. I mean, it's okay to take your weekends off. It's okay to actually book time for vacations. And in fact, if you don't take control of your time and your calendar, you're not going to be as productive. You're not going to get as much done. So these are all things that I've learned the hard way, but it's about prioritizing and being intentional about how you spend your time and setting clear boundaries.
Dana, Jessica, thank you both. Everything that you've shared from the beginning, talking about Asana's vision, how you guys are working together, tips for startups, building out marketing teams, tips for the next generation, getting started in their career. So many lessons that everyone can learn from you. And I cannot wait to go back, rewatch this myself, and be able to really write down all these lessons that you guys have shared. So thank you both, Jessica, Dana, so much for joining us on Mentor Momentum with Next Gen HQ.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
That was Mentor Momentum, sharing life and business lessons from incredible leaders. Looking for more momentum? Subscribe to our weekly Momentum newsletter at nextgenhq.com and check out our other podcast, Momentum Audio, on any of your favorite podcast channels. Now that's momentum.